The blade of the Void Executioner was not made of metal. It was a shard of captured event horizon, a sliver of absolute darkness that drank the light around it. Ronin knelt on the obsidian platform, his wrists bound by energy cuffs that hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. He could feel the eyes of 10,000 Aethelgardians boring into his back. The air on the planet Aethelgard Prime smelled of ozone and crushed lavender, a beautiful scent for such a grim occasion. "Any final words, Terran?" the magistrate intoned. He was a tall, spindly creature, with pale blue skin and robes that shimmered like oil on water. Lord Malakar. He had been looking for an excuse to execute a human scavenger since the first Terran trade ships docked in the sector. Trespassing in the sacred Garden of Kings was a convenient, if fabricated, charge. Ronin looked up. He didn't look at the magistrate. He looked at the executioner towering over him. The figure was clad in ceremonial armor, made of iridescent violet plating, a full helm obscuring their face. The only sound from the executioner was the low, rhythmic thrum of the void blade. "Yeah," Ronin said, his voice raspy from 3 days in a dehydration cell. "If you're going to swing that thing, aim for the neck. I'd hate to bleed on these nice, clean floors." A ripple of unease went through the crowd. Humans were supposed to beg. They were supposed to weep. They weren't supposed to give logistical advice on their own beheading. "Insolence," Lord Malakar hissed. "Executioner, proceed. Claim his essence for the High Council." The executioner raised the void blade. The darkness above Ronin's head expanded, blocking out the twin suns of the Aethelgard system. Ronin closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He thought of Earth, of the rain in Seattle, of the way coffee tasted on a cold morning. He waited for the cold bite of nothingness. He waited and waited. The hum of the blade stopped. Ronin cracked one eye open. The blade hovered inches from his neck, held by a hand that was trembling. The massive armored figure of the executioner was shaking, not with exertion, but with something else. "Executioner!" Malakar barked. "What is the meaning of this delay? Strike him down." The executioner slowly lowered the weapon. With a hiss of depressurizing seals, the heavy violet gauntlets reached up to the helm. The crowd gasped. The identity of a high executioner was sacred, never to be revealed in public. The helm turned, locking mechanisms disengaging with a series of sharp clicks. The executioner pulled it free and let it drop to the obsidian floor with a heavy clang that echoed across the silent plaza. Cascades of hair the color of spun silver spilled out, framing a face of terrifying, angular beauty. Her skin was the pale violet of twilight, marked with the silver geometric tattoos of the royal caste. Her eyes, solid orbs of glowing amethyst, widened as she stared down at the dirty, unshaven human at her feet. "I cannot," she whispered. Her voice was melodic, amplified by the acoustics of the arena, carrying a tremor that shook the very foundations of the Aethelgardian stoicism. "High Justicar Vayla?" Malakar stepped forward, his face twisting in confusion. "You violate protocol. You violate the law of shadows." "Why?" Vayla dropped to her knees. She didn't kneel to the magistrate. She knelt to Ronin. Her gloved hand reached out, hovering near his face, afraid to touch him, as if he were a hallucination that might vanish. "Because," Vayla said, her voice rising to a shout that silenced the murmuring crowd. 10 years ago, on the burning sands of Caste IV, this human gave me water." Ronin blinked, the memory hitting him like a physical blow. Caste IV, the proxy wars. He had been a mercenary then, young and stupid. The flashback hit him. The heat had been enough to melt the rubber soles of his boots. The battlefield was a graveyard of broken mechs and charred bodies. He had been scouting a ridge when he found her, an enemy combatant, an Aethelgardian elite buried under the wreckage of her skiff. Her armor was shattered, her violet blood drying into a crust on her skin. She was dehydrating, her silver hair matted with dust. By all rights of war, he should have put a bullet in her or left her to the suns. That was the protocol. Humans and Aethelgardians were killing each other over mining rights, but Ronin had looked at her cracked lips, at the defiant fire fading in her eyes. He had sighed, muttered a curse about his own soft heart, and uncorked his last canteen. "Drink," he had said, holding her head up. "Don't choke, it's warm, but it's wet." She had stared at him with feral confusion, expecting poison. When the water touched her lips, she drank greedily. He had spent the next 4 hours digging her out, bandages her leg, and then, when her evac ship signal appeared on his scanner, he had left her there to be found by her own people. He never asked her name. She never asked his. Back in the present, Vayla's violet eyes were swimming with tears, a rare sight for a species that prided itself on emotional control. "You," she whispered, touching his cheek. "You are the Star Walker, the one who spared the enemy." Lord Malakar marched forward, flanked by 4 guards with shock pikes. "This is preposterous! A sip of water?" "You suspend the High Justice for a sip of water. He is a criminal, Vayla. He defiled the sacred garden." Vayla stood up. The vulnerability vanished instantly, replaced by the cold, lethal grace of a High Justicar. She picked up her void blade, but this time, the tip was pointed at Malakar. "It was not just water," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "In our custom, to share life fluid when one faces the long sleep is to share a soul. He did not just save my life, Malakar. By the old laws, he bound his existence to mine." She turned to the crowd, raising her blade. "I invoke the Rite of Life Debt. If this man dies, I die. If his blood is spilled, mine flows with it. Who among you wishes to execute the High Justicar of the 7th house?" Silence. There's a terrified silence. To kill a High Justicar was to invite the wrath of the ancestors. Malakar's face turned a darker shade of blue. "You invoke laws that have been dead for 1,000 cycles. This pet of yours is a human. They have no concept of our honor." "I have a concept of getting these cuffs off," Ronin said, struggling to his feet. "And for the record, I didn't know about the soul-binding thing. I just didn't want you to die of thirst." Vayla looked back at him, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. A smile that made her look less like a grim reaper, and more like the woman he had saved in the sand. "That is why the bond is valid, Ronin, because you expected nothing. That is the purest honor." "This is not over," Malakar snarled, signaling his guards to stand down, but keeping his hand on his own sidearm. "The council will not accept this. The Rite of Life Debt requires the bonded to prove their worth. If he is your equal, Vayla, let him face the gauntlet of truths. If he survives, he walks free. If he fails, you both burn." Vayla stiffened. "The gauntlet is designed for Aethelgardian physiology. It will tear his mind apart." Ronin stepped forward, the energy cuff still humming. "Hey, Silver." Vayla turned to him, startled by the nickname. "Is this gauntlet thing fighting or thinking?" "Both," she said softly. "And pain, infinite pain." Ronin shrugged. "I've been married before. I can handle pain. Let's do it." The High Council chamber was a masterpiece of impossible architecture. Crystalline spires floated in midair, held together by gravity manipulation fields. Ronin stood in the center of the circle of judgment. His cuffs had been removed, but he felt heavier than before. Vayla stood at the edge of the circle, stripped of her executioner's armor, wearing a flowing gown of white silk that made her look ethereal. She looked worried. For an alien race that supposedly suppressed emotion, she was wearing her heart on her sleeve. Or she would be, if she had sleeves. "The first trial," the head elder announced. His voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere. "The trial of endurance. An Aethelgardian warrior can withstand the pressure of the ocean depths. Can the human?" A gravity field slammed into Ronin. It wasn't water pressure, it was pure kinetic force. It felt like a tank had parked on his chest. Ronin's knees buckled, his bones creaked audibly. "Yield!" Malakar shouted from the observation deck. "Yield, creature, and we will make your death quick." Ronin gritted his teeth. He forced his head up. He saw Vayla. She wasn't looking away. She was channeling something to him. Not magic, not tech, but pure belief. Her hands were pressed against the barrier, her knuckles white. "Don't you dare die," her eyes seemed to say. "I waited 10 years to find you." "Don't you dare die now!" Ronin roared. It was a guttural primal sound, a sound of earth. He locked his knees. He forced his spine straight. Human bones were dense, forged in high gravity. Human muscles were stubborn. "Is that all you got?" Ronin wheezed, blood trickling from his nose. "My grandmother hugs harder than this," the elders murmured. The gravity field intensified, then suddenly cut off. Ronin collapsed to one hands and knees, gasping for air. "He lives," the head elder said, sounding surprised. "The physiology is crude, but resilient." "Luck," Malakar scoffed. "The second trial. The trial of the mind." Let him face his darkest fears. The mental fortitude of a Terran is notoriously weak. They are ruled by chaotic emotions. A psychic dampener descended. The room vanished. Ronin wasn't in the council chamber anymore. He was back on Earth, but it was Earth burning. He saw his old unit, dead. He saw the mistakes he'd made. He saw himself alone, aging, dying in a gutter with no one to remember his name. "You are nothing," a voice whispered in his skull. "You are a scavenger. You are dust." Then the vision shifted. He saw Vayla. He saw her head on a spike. He saw Malakar laughing. "If you fail, she dies," the voice hissed. "You are weak. Let go." Ronin clenched his fists in the illusion. "No. Why? She is an alien. She is a monster. She's the only person in 10 years who looked at me and didn't see a tool." Ronin said to the darkness, "She saw me, and I gave her water. I made a choice." He visualized the water, the cool, clear water. He focused on that sensation, the simple act of giving. The darkness shrieked and shattered like glass. Ronin woke up on the floor of the chamber, shaking. Vayla was there, kneeling beside him, her cool hand on his forehead. She had breached the containment circle. "You should not be here," Ronin whispered. "I do not care," Vayla replied, her voice fierce. "I felt your mind, Ronin. It is loud and chaotic and beautiful." "The human has passed the second trial," the head elder announced, his tone now tinged with respect. "He possesses a will of iron." Malakar descended from his podium, his face a mask of fury. "Enough of these parlor tricks. The third trial is combat. By the old laws, if a bonded pair stands judgment, they must face the champion of the accuser together." Vayla stood up, helping Ronin to his feet. "I have no armor, Malakar, and he is exhausted." "Then you will die," Malakar smiled cruelly. He gestured to the gates. Out walked a beast that looked like a nightmare woven from steel and hate. A cyber render, a genetically modified predator with hydraulic jaws and blades for limbs. It was the size of a transport truck. "This hardly seems fair," Ronin muttered, wiping the blood from his nose. "I assume you don't have a weapon hidden in that dress?" "No," Vayla said, her stance shifting into a combat crouch. "But I have you." "I like the confidence," Ronin said. He scanned the room. No weapons, just the crystalline pillars. "Okay, the bigger they are," the beast charged. Vayla moved with a blur of speed, dodging a strike that shattered the stone floor. She was fast, faster than any human, but she couldn't hurt the thing with her bare hands. Ronin rolled under a swinging tail, feeling the wind of death brush his hair. "Ronin," Vayla shouted. "The hydraulic couplings on its neck, they are exposed. On it!" Ronin didn't try to outrun the beast. He ran at it. As the creature lunged for Vayla, Ronin slid across the polished floor, like a baseball player stealing home. He grabbed a shard of crystal debris from the shattered floor. Razor sharp, he leaped onto the beast's back. The creature thrashed, trying to dislodge him. It was like riding an earthquake. "Hey, ugly!" Ronin shouted, stabbing the crystal shard into the soft cabling at the base of the creature's skull. The beast roared, hydraulic fluid spraying like oil. It stumbled, its coordination failing. But it wasn't dead. It spun, throwing Ronin into a pillar. Ronin hit hard, ribs cracked. He slid to the floor, vision blurring. The beast turned its attention to him, raising a massive claw for the killing blow. "No," Vayla screamed. She didn't run away. She didn't try to flank it. She jumped between Ronin and the monster. She held out her hand, palm open, not in an attack, but in a gesture of protection. "If you want him," she snarled, her eyes glowing with blinding intensity, "you go through me." The beast hesitated. Maybe it was her royal blood. Maybe it was the sheer force of her will. But then, something impossible happened. The blood dripping from Ronin's nose, red, human blood, mixed with the violet blood dripping from Vayla's arm, where she had grazed the floor. As the fluids touched on the pristine white stone, a pulse of energy rippled through the room. The crystalline spires began to hum. A light, warm and golden, erupted from Vayla and Ronin simultaneously. The beast recoiled, blinded by the radiance. "What is this?" Malakar shrieked, shielding his eyes. "Sorcery." "No," the head elder whispered, standing up. "Resonance, the prophecy of the twin bloods." Ronin felt a surge of strength that wasn't his own. He felt Vayla's speed, her precision. Vayla felt his grit, his stubborn refusal to yield. They moved as one. Ronin scrambled up, grabbed a heavy metal sconce from the wall, and tossed it to Vayla. She caught it without looking, spun, and jammed it into the beast's already damaged neck mechanism. At the same moment, Ronin swept the creature's legs with a piece of debris. The cyber render crashed to the ground, silenced. Vayla stood over the defeated monster, chest heaving, her silver hair wild around her face. Ronin limped to her side. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw a blush of indigo on her cheeks. "You fight like a feral grox," she said, breathless. And you fight like a ballerina with anger issues, he retorted, grinning through his pain. The head elder descended into the arena. Malakar tried to intervene, but the elder silenced him with a wave of his hand. The bond is proven, the elder declared. Not only by law, but by the light of the ancestors. No Aethelgardian has ever achieved resonance with another species. This changes everything. He looked at Ronin. You are no longer a scavenger, Terran. You are bondmate to the High Justicar. You are of the blood. Malakar spat on the ground. This is an abomination. I will not bow to a dirtborn. Then you will leave, Vayla said coldly. Ronin saved me when my own kind left me to rot in the sun. He has more honor in his pinky finger than you have in your entire lineage. She turned to Ronin, ignoring the stunned court. You gave me water, she said softly, her amethyst eyes locking onto his brown ones. Now I give you my life, my house, my heart. Ronin scratched the back of his neck, suddenly feeling shy in front of the galactic royalty. I mean, a simple thanks would have worked, but I guess I can't turn down a castle. Vayla laughed. It was a sound like wind chimes, beautiful and free. It comes with a lot of paperwork, Ronin. I'll handle the paperwork, he said, taking her hand. You handle the guys with swords. 1 year later, the balcony of the High Justicar's estate overlooked the violet oceans of Aethelgard Prime. It was a peaceful evening, the twin suns setting in a blaze of orange and gold. Ronin leaned against the railing, holding a glass of Terran whiskey, an import he had insisted on. He was clean-shaven now, wearing the silk tunics of a consort, though he still wore his old combat boots. Some habits died hard. Vayla walked out to join him. She moved slower than usual, her hand resting protectively on her abdomen. The council is still arguing, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They cannot decide if the child will be more Aethelgardian or human. Ronin chuckled, placing his hand over hers. He could feel the faint rhythmic thrumming of the baby's heartbeat, stronger and faster than any human heart. Does it matter? He asked. Malakar says the child will be a hybrid monster. Vayla mused, though the fear that used to be in her voice was gone. Malakar is currently cleaning sanitation droids in the lower sector, Ronin reminded her. His opinion is irrelevant. Vayla turned to face him. Her eyes, once solid amethyst, now had flecks of warm hazel dancing in them, a permanent side effect of their bond resonance. Do you regret it? She asked suddenly. Giving me that water. You could be on Earth right now, reigning, drinking coffee, being normal. Ronin looked out at the alien horizon. He looked at the woman who had defied an empire for him. He looked at the future resting in her womb. A child that the doctors said possessed the genetic markers that could bridge the gap between their species' immune systems, potentially curing the rot that had plagued her people for centuries. He thought about the normal life he had left behind, the loneliness, the drifting. Vayla, he said, kissing her forehead. I traded a canteen of lukewarm water for a queen and a family. Best deal I ever made. She smiled, that radiant, heart-stopping smile that had frozen an executioner's blade a year ago. You are ridiculous, human. I'm Ronin, he corrected gently, and you're stuck with me. As the suns dipped below the horizon, the crystalline flowers in the garden below began to glow, reacting to the presence of the unborn child. They pulsed in a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of two worlds joining together. It was said later, in the history books of both Earth and Aethelgard, that the Golden Age didn't begin with a treaty or a war. It began in a desert with an act of kindness that rippled across a decade. It began because one human refused to let an enemy die of thirst, and in doing so, watered the seeds of a new galaxy. Ronin took a sip of his whiskey and watched the stars come out. For the first time in his life, he wasn't looking for a way off the planet. He was home.